Okay, guys, this is going to be go for a walk with me, I guess. Two of my favorite things at once. Walking on a beautiful day that I have off, and prophecy. So I wanted to share what got me into so much trouble. The things that there was a time there, I think I have like an abundance of revelation problem, possibly. This camera picks up so much, I'm going to try to keep the neighbors out of it. So it got to where I was so fascinated by prophecy and the Lord coming back and amazed that every time I opened the Bible, it's like I saw something else new, and I saw there's somebody coming, so I have to hide them on the camera too. We'll take a detour. And I mean, it was opening up to me, and Peter, the elements melting with fervent heat, matched Revelation, I believe, chapter 20 and 21. So that would be after the millennial reign, and the one taken and the one left, maybe multiple prophecies, but what that was talking about was the ones that are taken and the ones left. In that case, the ones taken are taken to the Battle of Armageddon, because that's where the eagles will gather together. And so anyway, it was to a point to where I opened my Bible and I read something, and it was like I literally in my mind saw a light go on in a room in heaven, and Jesus was alerted, and he wasn't displeased. But I know I'm not the only one. There's people that see a lot more and different, better things than myself. And unfortunately, in some ways, my whole family is revelatory, and I hold back to saying prophet because you don't really want to take that role or claim that role, in my opinion. But it's revelatory. I would definitely say teacher, because we have such a passion for people to see the truth and not be lied to and tricked into hell. That is so evil and wrong. I'm definitely the teacher's heart with the details and the ability to express repeatedly until someone can understand. So I would definitely say teacher, end of revelatory. But we have definitely been used in the prophetic, and I used to never say that on my old channel. But now that I have been hit by 10,000 demons so hard and almost died, I'm going to go ahead and start saying it, because something is very different. Something has happened. I don't know if I'm being promoted. At this point, anything might happen. So in this video, I want to get into basically what was opening up to me about the seals of Revelation. For what it's worth, take it or leave it. Of course, read the Bible yourself, pray about it yourself. And I'm not forcing this on anyone, because part of what I believe has been shown to me is a lot of this prophecy is hidden, and that's okay. People just aren't going to see it, because major prophetic things in the past were hidden until they happened, and I believe that is God's strategy, and that's also prophecy being fulfilled. So the things in the past, like Jesus dying on the cross, people did not see that. People did not see the church age coming. That was hidden in the Old Testament. And so I believe everything to do with the seals opening, the tribulation, and the rapture and the wrath of God is very likely hidden until the last moment. And I may be even wrong for saying it, which is another reason why I'm glad that my second channel will probably be very small. And the only people that find it will probably be the ones that God wants to find it, and the ones interested to know anyway. And God is going to show us what we need to see anyway for our own faith. And another thing that I believe is so super important with all of this is that the emphasis doesn't need to be on the timing of anything as much as getting right with God and doing the things that he would have us do in this time. And I just can't believe how isolated it is out here. I love it. There's cornfields this way, and then there's a neighbor's house up ahead this way, about a quarter of a mile. And then over here, I don't know how much the camera's going to pick up. This is wild. It's just straight wild, and usually you can see more of it. I believe there are some wild cats that live out here, and definitely coyotes. So what I want to cover on this video for as far as prophecy goes is what some of the things I was running into as far as patterns and schemes and times. I had started noticing these patterns as far back as 2017 and didn't really pay attention to them or notice them until I watched way too much of Paul Begley, which he does not agree with my prophecy either. Like, he didn't point me out and say I don't agree with her, but they think differently, and that's fine. But one thing I will definitely give Paul Begley, thank you God, is that he says that we need to be super careful not to just think we're going to escape everything, which so many more Christians are thinking that now. Thank you God, because 10 years ago, people weren't really saying that, and that was a grief to me. But now people are more like saying, be careful. It's not like we're just going to escape everything because we're entitled, and avoiding the escapism thing, that we won't see persecution, we won't see hardship, that we don't need to be prepared for anything. And Paul Begley is saying, just read Matthew chapter 24 and look at how many things happen there before the angels collect believers. So I want to make a very definite point on that. Angels collecting believers, in my opinion, of Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the gospel, is, in my opinion, the rapture that everyone talks about. And so if you place that in the timeline, it says quotation marks immediately after the tribulation in at least two of the places, in Matthew and Mark. Matthew chapter 24, Matthew chapter 13. So there's that. But thank God, L.A. Marzulli, Steve Quayle, Paul Begley are putting their life out there big time. They're going to get hit in one way or other. We're probably going to see it, sadly, for doing what they do, saying what they say. But thank God they're out there warning people. Paul Begley has stood very strong in warning people and giving timelines multiple times that it is not to preach a rapture, and multiple times saying there are different views on this, on timelines, on the time frames. So I really appreciate him for that. And L.A. Marzulli is great lately about pointing out the alien deception that's coming. Another thing I should have never talked about. I'm going to show you guys this part of the field because it finally opened up. I've seen a few bobcats out here before. It's pretty cool. One of them was like in my yard. So here's the part that's open and really neat. I just love all that. And back when I was really going through the narcissistic abuse desert, this was so healing to me to just walk out here, and it was just so healing and peaceful. Just can't even explain it. I don't know how many times I've walked over here. So I'm about to turn around so I won't get the neighbors in my view. Where I was, L.A. Marzulli is covering so much about, he has made it his dedicated project. He's covered Nephilims and all kind of things, but his dedicated project to expose and expose. Thank God so many people have been doing this. This is another answered prayer that I had 15 years ago of, God, please let Christians far and wide know that aliens are demons, and that this is a trick to say that God did not create you, that demons seeded life on earth for millions of years, and they're going to come back now and save us and transform us to the new age of our evolution. I'm about to turn around. And that, anyway, that all, thank God, there's so many people that have been talking about that deception, that people have had a chance to know it, and people in the small churches that I know are talking about it in all denominations that I know of. And that's just so much of an answered prayer. That's where my heart is with teaching, is that people not be deceived in any way. And so L.A. Marzulli is exposing this alien agenda, and it's been in our culture deliberately as soon as the technology, and I believe the technology has been introduced progressively into our culture to control people. In the end time explosion of population, I believe 1800 is when we first hit 1 billion people, somewhere around there. And I did like so many exposure videos on all this on my old channel. But the technology introduced so that we could have entertainment the way we do, so that we could be mind control programmed massively, that Star Trek and Star Wars evolution, aliens populating multiple universes. So that's already a pattern on our mind, so that people can so easily believe that, oh, well, that's just how things happen, so that if they do pull the alien card, we'll all be deceived. That much easier. And so I'm grateful for these guys coming out saying what they do. And to start covering what I believe I was shown, for the seals, first of all, a lot of people are basing their tribulation teaching based upon concepts such as everything in Revelation is super scary, super horrible, and you don't even want to be here. So there's just an automatic blanket of abject horror that nothing in tribulation is even fathomable. Nothing in Revelation, that is even fathomable. Absolute shock and horror. Therefore, these are like concepts that are like not detailed enough to match reality, but are put into people's minds, and so they just grasp them. I don't blame them. People that were taught this way since they were children. Everything in Revelation is absolutely horror, unfathomable. So, of course, God would not have his children there based on verses like we're not appointed unto wrath, and not even thinking about that whole verse is talking about the wrath of God in hellfire, not any kind of wrath of persecution that Christians have always seen. And it may have a double meaning, but it's just completely left out. The true meaning is completely omitted and ignored. And so we have to avoid the entire book of Revelation, but a more careful study, an accurate study, a detailed analog study of Revelation shows something different. That, for example, the tribulation from the Antichrist, the tribulations of the world, the kind of concept of we shall enter the kingdom of heaven through much tribulation is extremely different, and always has been extremely different. Let's go down this road for a minute. Then, this is just Bobcat territory. Maybe we'll see one. Tribulation is very different from the wrath of God poured out at the very end of time in order to purge and cleanse the earth in preparation for the final return of Christ. From what I have read, in my opinion, the tribulation only occurs during part of the seals. So in order, you have seals and then trumpets and then bowls of wrath that occur one after the other. And it has to be that way. They can't be all the same time, because you have the 7 trumpets placed in the last seal and the 7 bowls placed in the last trumpet, and there's no way to take that out of chronological order, in my opinion. And so you have what looks to me like the tribulation is definitely during the 5th seal, when it talks about martyrs crying out from under the seat of being martyred. And then you have all the rest of Revelation is something different. Seals opening can already be happening, and I don't find a Bible verse that says that it can't be happening already before the tribulation, before the 7 years of the 70th week of Daniel. And so the tribulation, if it's maybe during the 3rd, 4th, and 5th seal, or even just during the 5th seal, that's the tribulation. And that pretty much shows you that the tribulation is not the entire book of Revelation. It's just part of the seals, because there's a description of so many other different things after that. And I believe I've went into so much detail on so many other videos on my old channel showing and proving this over and over. I won't get into so much this time, but just a thought of the people who see the entire book of Revelation as the tribulation, that no one's going to be here, versus we're probably already into the seals, and there's more prophecy watchers saying that now. We're probably already into the seals, and we won't see the tribulation until 3rd, 4th, or 5th seal. Definitely 5th seal, but maybe even earlier. Then it ends at the 6th seal, cataclysm, when the wrath of God comes after that, and then the wrath is poured out. So that's a very different concept of the tribulation being part of Revelation versus all of Revelation is the whole tribulation. once more, I don't blame people for how they're thinking about it. I just think it's fascinating that, anybody who wants to see deeper and see the keys, or, are seers or watchers. So what really put all this into place for me, and I still have the videos on Planet X, I may post that. I don't believe in a Planet X as much as that's the catchword that has been used. That's the catchword that has been used to explain the sixth seal cataclysm of Joel and the sixth seal in Revelation chapter 6. That there's a great cataclysm coming. That's what Jesus talked about, the end of the age, when he talked about the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, in Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21, Luke was a doctor. That was the only place in the Bible that explained in detail some of the very, very details of the cataclysm. And he seemed to write down more of the signs from heaven. And the powers of heaven shall be shaken, which we're already seeing. But once I was able to understand and see that the cataclysm is coming, and how you could prove with circumstantial evidence that the people in the world are watching for this cataclysm coming soon, the powers of heaven shaken, culminating in whatever passes near us and has happened before. That's why they're watching like Mars so closely, as something happened with Mars before. There's so much. I don't even need to get into that. That'll take too much time. But cataclysm is coming of the sixth seal. And then, let's look down these rows. I know people that find arrowheads down rows like this in some areas. I don't go arrowhead hunting. I don't have time. But once, to me, the whole key of everything that has been hidden, once you know about the cataclysm that's coming and what time it is, and you line that up and match it in Revelation, the sixth seal, you line that up and match it in Matthew chapter 24, of Luke chapter 21, Mark chapter 13. There are verses about the sun going dark or turning red, the moon going blood red, and a mighty shaking of the earth, sea and waves roaring. Whenever all of that lines up together in 3 Gospels and the 6th chapter of Revelation, that is the cataclysm in which 2 things are said to happen. That there will be a sign of the Son of Man in heaven, the sign of Jesus, whether that's a cross or whatever that is. They see the throne of God. And the angels will collect believers, because that is what we will escape. We're going to escape that cataclysm, not the tribulation of Antichrist, in my opinion. We're going to escape the cataclysm and the wrath that follows. And if you read what happens in the trumpets and the bowls of wrath poured out that follow, that looks like what will happen after a great cataclysm of something passing nearby to earth. There's all these heavenly signs that happen. So to me, that mathematically matches so perfectly, you can't ignore it. So you have the sixth seal cataclysm puts everything else into place. And if we're not going to see the tribulation until the fifth seal, right before the rapture, right? Tribulation, rapture, wrath poured out. That's the order, in my opinion. Tribulation of Antichrist, rapture of the elect believers, not Israel, the elect believers. The only reason people throw Israel in there as being elect is to explain away their pre-trib rapture, in my opinion. And so the idea of the cataclysm to me just locks everything into the proper order. Tribulation, rapture of the church, wrath of God poured out. And I believe it's called the transgression of desolation in Daniel. I think that's the proper name for it. If that's wrong, I'll put something up on whenever I edit this. But the transgression of desolation in Daniel gives a perfect time window for things to play out in that order. There is extra time left over after the tribulation. And this is the time for the wrath to be poured out before the Battle of Armageddon. So that's why I believe in the order that way. And I forget, I think I was just mapping events that had happened in the world. That's how I started coming into the idea. And I do believe, I don't want to say that if it's something I'm just coming up with and God didn't give it to me, I don't want to credit God when He's not doing it, but I don't want to leave God out. I want to give God all the credit and all the glory if I'm right, if this is what He's showing me. I want to give Him all the credit and glory because I can do nothing. I would have nothing without Him. And I don't have my real name on here. I have not had my face on here a whole lot on my old channel. And because it's not about me, I did all my information for free because my passion is just to teach and share, and that makes my life very rich. To share and share and share and teach and see people's comments of how they were helped and edified. So that's been my motive and aim and goal. God gets all the glory. And I was shown the pattern, I do believe, of looking at the seals, looking carefully at the seals of Revelation. We're about to come on somebody's house and their dogs start barking at me, so I'll probably turn around soon. In the seals of Revelation, a lot of people think just automatically, and tell me a Bible verse that proves this, by the way. Tell me a Bible verse that proves that the seals only can open once the tribulation begins. There is no Bible verse to prove that. Where people get their proof of that is the concept, the false concept of we're not going to be here for the entire book of Revelation, period. To me, that's not very logical of a conclusion. And also, while I'm thinking about it, make sure to look behind me when I turn around. I'm just so wary of cats out here. So, people that use Bible verses from Thessalonians that claim that the church is the restrainer, the Holy Spirit-filled church is the restrainer, there's no Bible verse that says that. What a lot of people just simply aren't taught is there's no Bible verse to prove that. Lots of things could be the restrainer. Michael the archangel, principalities that God has put into place could be a restrainer. The church was not even able to restrain Hitler. The church was not even able to restrain Stalin from appearing, so why are we going to be restraining the Antichrist? There's some good books. I'm trying to remember the name. Michael Snyder has a good book on the tribulation, but I don't agree with all his ideas. He just has a lot of good points on there about the errors and pitfalls of modern popular ideas of why there's a pre-tribulation rapture. And Michael Snyder, and a documentary called After the Tribulation, I think. And I think you can find that one for free online. So the information is out there. Most people just never hear it from their church, and they don't think much more about it other than, cool, we're not going to be here for anything bad. I don't blame them. That's my sentiment. But the facts are very different. If you look in 2 Thessalonians, I forget the exact chapter and verse, I believe chapter 2, it's talking about when you look at all this area of he that holdeth will hold, he that letteth will let, no proof that that's the church, Spirit-filled church. That's a very popular tradition, period. And then if you read further, there are two things that absolutely must happen before our gathering together with the Lord in the air. Two things that must absolutely happen per those Bible verses that people just read over and never see. And it's amazing to the point that I think it's spiritual prophecy being fulfilled, that people are blinded. So it doesn't bother me anymore. Two things that must absolutely happen before we gather together with the Lord in the air is, number one, a great falling away and apostasy of the church. That doesn't mean we're falling away into a rapture. And I mean, people have even people that think that means rapture also see that other meaning, that it means something's going to fall down, not go up. So that's not the rapture. That is literally we falling away from the faith, the true faith in Jesus Christ. And the second thing that will happen is that we will see the Antichrist appear. So literally verbatim in the verses cannot be denied in any way. I'm shocked. My jaw drops onto the floor when I see people deny it. I don't see how they deny it. Absolutely will see the Antichrist before gathering to the Lord in the air. Now, some people are smart enough to have seen that and say, well, that just means we're going to see him and he's going to be here. Then we're going to be raptured. Then the tribulation happens. So, I mean, there's that. But that's just to point out some very common fallacies and false ideas, traditions of man. Traditions are so powerful, but I do believe that God has let them happen. It's prophetic. People are not going to see. Somehow I just believe that's prophetic. People are not going to see till it actually happens. And the main reason why I will be the crazy person and just say it is in case it helps someone who wasn't sure and they have eyes to see and ears to hear. Or there's those of us out here with this voice so that when it starts happening, people don't just lose their faith and throw in the towel. They're like, there was these weird people that were convicted that they honestly did see it in the verses differently. So there was always that. So, it keeps people more open in case of against deception. But since I had the mind frame of seals opening does not mean that's when the tribulation starts, since I'm not coming from that prejudice. And a lot of people say, well, that white horse that comes in the first seal has absolutely got to be, that's got to be the Antichrist coming on that white horse. Nothing says that at all, ever. But what I absolutely do believe about those first four horsemen is that they are preparing the world. They are collapsing, consolidating, and preparing the entire world for Antichrist appearing, which will happen before or during the fifth seal. So your first four horsemen, which I believe were entering the third with all of the virus stuff, and I had been saying that since 2018 real strong. Like, since 2018, I had been saying, watch out for 2020, 2021. That's our next cycle. And I had been saying that, and this preacher got so jealous that by the end of 2019, I was saying, guys, watch out for market and world changes 2020, 2021. So when the virus came and the UN and the farmers were saying that our markets and our food is changing and we're at the wheat, the barley, and the scales, that's when that preacher started trying to curse me with the Old Testament because he was so jealous and outraged. And he tried to curse me most of 2020 with the Old Testament. And then I believe a deal was made. And the curse actually did hit on September the 11th. And I didn't even notice that it was September the 11th because I was hit so hard. But I was writing on my calendar the crazy, strange parts of it. So about 2 months later, I looked back on my calendar. I was like, that's 9/11. That's kind of weird, whatever. But it's like the Lord kept drawing my eye back to that date, 9/11. So in our panic year of 2020, absolute panic, sheer world-changing panic, chaos, 9/11, the red alert day of panic year, is when all the demons of hell hit me, and I had already been saying we're at the third seal. Watch out, the third seal is opening. And so I have come to believe that this was allowed for lots of reasons, and one of those reasons is to be a sounding alarm that we are at the third seal. The third seal has opened. That everything that I said was correct and true. In case that helps anyone. But he was so jealous because I had picked up on this pattern, and it seemed to actually be happening. He was just hateful anyway. He already hated me and abused me. He had been abusing me for so long that I believe that's part of why his curses were so impactful, because there was trauma bonds and contact points and abuse and violence and wickedness. And he already had tried to, of course, send me all kind of weird curses. I almost had a massive car wreck and messed things up at work and all kind of crazy weird stuff that I could just pray it away and make it stop until a deal was made. And so that's kind of the long and the short of why I have been off YouTube. And the fun part was I was already getting off. I think I already felt how dark and wicked he was getting, and he was just taking over too much of my, it was weird. And 2020 was happening, and I had felt God saying a season is coming around election time of you're spending so much time helping people, answering their comments, constantly producing videos until 3 a.m, and it's time to get off of YouTube and just get close to Jesus and hear his voice because of what's coming. It was a prepper thing. So I was ending, if anybody finds this video and remembers, I was ending with Bible studies of Revelation, Hebrews, and Daniel, and it was very blessed. And I saw the glory of God, and then all hell broke loose. I was already ending my channel. So it was already that season. It just came a little different than I thought. So back to what I believe the seals of Revelation really are, is that the first 4 seals are going to specifically prepare the world for the Antichrist rule through emergencies, fake and false emergencies. They will specifically launch the very last days, matches the end time events in the Gospels of Mark, Luke, and Matthew, and they fall obviously closely together in a pattern. Now, either I have picked up on the pattern of what's happening through prophecy, or some kind of a weird cultish worldwide scheme that they're trying to make prophecy happen. But I just have a prejudice that God would not allow a massive, weird, worldwide scheme without it actually matching his prophecy. You never know. We could carry on for another 100 years. And if so, it's just a cult scheme that really looks like the seal's opening. But because of dreams I had and things I felt in the spirit throughout the past 15 years and things like that, and then all the demons of hell hit me on 9/11, things like that, I'm kind of prejudiced that that is exactly what's happening. Another thing that kind of makes it look that way is the weather escalation. Does not look like it can, the world can stay the way it is and escalate this way for 30 more years, and it doesn't look like Israel, that situation is going to last 100 more years without following right into Bible prophecy. We're at the fig tree generation. If you listen to what Jesus said about the generation that saw Israel come together would see the end times, then we've seen almost 80 years, is it? 80 years? So it doesn't look like we're going to hang around for another 180 years or something. So it's things like that. Altogether, it's like, that's everything that I put on my old channel, is that it's coming to like a mathematical impossibility. That it's anything other than that's where we are, and of course everyone's seeing it. But I still leave the door open to not be self-deluded and prideful and just think I know it all. And so, since my mind was open, I think that's someone coming. Since my mind was open to the seals of Revelation do not mean that the tribulation has started, I was open to patterns that could have been shown to me of other things that could be the seals of Revelation and what they could mean. And I had found this pattern, like I said, I started picking it up early 2017, and then things became more and more clear to me as I watched Paul Begley more, and I noticed the cataclysm pattern happening of locking and lining everything up prophetically. I hope this camera is pointed in the right direction. You guys aren't bored and horrified. So what looks like to me was, and this is another thing that matches 9/11 bizarrely, is that the first seal was publicly opened, the first sign and signal of it, on September the 11th of 2001 in New York. And we're all probably aware of what really happened there by now. 2001, September the 11th. So if the seals really started opening 2001, September the 11th, then how bizarre is it that everything that's happened to me lately happened on 9/11? I mean, there's a lot of coincidences. I get that. And that is a weird day. That could have simply been the day that the devil had the most permissions to hit me as hard as he could, because it honestly felt like there was a weird Job deal made of, okay, just throw everything in the kitchen sink at her, and then if she survives, then glory to God, because she's not going to kill herself and she's not going to turn against God. And I have already been proved and tried. We're way past that. This is like the most beautiful walk to me, in my opinion, this little trail. It's so gorgeous. So 9/11, if the seals were opening then, and then 9/11, it hits me again when I'm saying the third seal is opening. What an interesting coincidence, just messages like that, maybe. I'm always watching for snakes on this trail. But that's the view. I love that view. It's so peaceful. There's so many different angles of it too. I like walking out there too. But so I'm open to the first seal, the white horseman opening September the 11th. And the reason I say that is if you read the verse of what happens on that white horse galloping, that is going to be your beginning of setting up the entire world. Think of how differently the world changed after that toward Antichrist. That's going to be setting up your entire world to takeovers. And that is the language that's used going forth, conquering and to conquer. And so you had all sorts of takeovers in government, banking, war, politics, natural resources. New laws were set up. Stealth laws were set up. They had the excuse to set in all these stealth motives and means to take over so many things because now we're in a different world of threat, right? Patriot Act, biolabs in the U.S., NSA spying, centers of spying and recording, documenting laws, taking away any rights in case of emergency. Quote, war on terror. There's other patterns in there I'm not going to mention because it's too bizarre. But if you notice, I've noticed everything is kind of on a 10-year cycle. They made a big public show about 10 years later in 2011 that bin Laden had been killed and the war on terror was over. He died, and everybody knows how fake that was and how fake they buried him, and all that was so fake. And then, if you look at the idea of 2011 begins the Red Horse era, this is the thing. We're not necessarily thinking that we're in seals at all, because our natural prejudice is, no, that's going to be just so cataclysmic and horrific that no one can even live through seals opening. No one will even live through it. But we've been in a normalcy bias that everything, our media is telling us everything's pretty much stable. And so that's another reason people may not notice what time it really is, because we're expecting that to be so cataclysmic. There's, and for it to happen so quickly, maybe. So I believe people are missing it because of normalcy bias type ideas. But the reason, if you read the verses about the Red Horseman, and if you look at that decade, that's whenever, and this all matches the beginning of sorrows also. That, for example, the sign of a great sword, look at how much ISIS moved through that decade. The sign of the great sword, peace taken from the earth. You had people on the internet that were noticing peace were taken from the earth, and that many, many different ways, mostly overseas, so that we don't notice it over here in the West as much, unless we lost a child at war or something. I believe that something happened when we invaded Libya and attacked Libya. I felt it in the spirit. It was almost as though it was so violently barbaric, excuseless. And you saw the people that were in control when it happened. To me, that was so significant. It took over my life for a few years that we invaded Libya. And I didn't want to be like some hippie, some peace-loving hippie. It wasn't like that, but something spiritual happened right then. And that was 2011. Something happened. It's so funny, too. There was another 9/11 incident had to do with Libya with our ambassador dying, but that was later. So the Libya thing was, to me, possibly the indicator that the second seal opened. There were so many murders of babies. There was a Tripoli massacre. It was all hidden. But there was so much that happened on that decade. Peace taken from the earth. Groups turned against each other. Poverty, homelessness, narcissism, human trafficking, refugees, upheaval in our private lives like never before. The white horseman, I believe, was still galloping to conquer. The banking, spying, collapsing household governments into all kinds of debt. Fukushima, setting up enemies of Israel in a circle around her. That was another thing very important about that decade, is preparing for the final events around Israel in the so-called Arab Spring. Set up for future prophetic wars. Weather is already changing, but it's not quite as catastrophic yet. The powers of heaven began to shake. At the 7-year marker on that one, you had heavenly signs of the blood moon, Revelation 12 sign, eclipses, the weather and food, Trump was elected. And then what signaled the end of that one in 2019 is so-called your main ISIS leaders were killed, and supposedly ISIS ended. So that is a clear cycle, regardless of what it means. But something interesting that happened in 2018, which is another thing that made that preacher very jealous, I believe. I never went on his page and said these things. I never called him out by name. But I had come to notice over 4-year period that he absolutely, viciously, violently, demonically hated me. So I ignored him for about 2 of those 4 years completely. But there were times he would come to town for a revival or something that I would watch more closely because I felt like he was in my backyard. So I did notice over the years that this dude hates me so much. And it's super weird. But one of the things there that I did not do for him or anything, it just happened. The fall of 2018, everything visibly changed for me. The sunlight changed. The sunlight was super, super bright. And the shadows were very different. It was like we were in an eclipse. I take that as a sign of the powers of heaven were shaken or have already started to shake. That's whenever the weather really picked up. You had the hurricane season. man, there were so many things that happened right around then. This is an interesting tree line to me because that wild field is right behind it. People said they have seen big black jaguars and tawny mountain lions. Things come through here every so often. So I'm always kind of on guard of what's watching me while I walk. 2018, I went and I probably freaked my mom out. She's been through a lot, so poor mom. But I was like, Mom, look at the sky. Look at the shadows. I said, everything is so different. There's these little shadows that don't belong here, and it looks so different. From then on for the next few years, and I still see it mostly in the fall, there's these shadows that are just wrong. It's never been this way. The shadows are wrong. The sunlight, blaringly, ridiculously, blaringly bright, way too bright, the wrong color. I can even see it in pictures that people take and send me. I'm like, that sun is wrong, and the shadows are wrong. And it mostly shows up in the fall now, and it's just fun. It's funny how people have had the theories online, all sorts of wild, crazy theories, that there's mirrors in the sky and there's fake suns, and people are preparing fake suns for whenever the cataclysms come so people can be tricked longer, whatever. I'm not buying much of any of that, but in case. I know of all the theories and all the whatever they call them, the patents on the fake suns and China building a fake sun. That's the reason, though, for the Mars and the sun interest, and we need to colonize the Mars. I believe that is the reason, because they know a cataclysm is coming to Earth and we could lose Earth. They're trying to find ways to either lie to people about what's really happening or escape it somehow. They've realized that the deep bunkers underground are not going to work, because that's just going to have magma going into those bunkers and destroying them probably. But the sun changed, the shadows changed in 2018, and I believe we have been through what is biblically grand scale enough to be the first and second seal. So this kind of pattern is why by mid-2018, I was saying we definitely need to be on the lookout for the third seal coming, because now the weather was changing. And the third seal in the Bible is talking about wheat, barley, and scales. And I don't know if this is a 10-year cycle or something like it. I don't know if it's going to increase like birth pangs. I don't know if it's going to happen more and more frequently and often. I don't know if it's going to be shorter time frames, like if we're going to see the fourth seal just as soon as we see the third. I have no clue. I'm not giving a time range, really. I'm just saying what I think I've noticed. So the wheat, barley, and the scales would match the weather with the locust problem and the weather issues. And now the United Nations and the farmers have been saying it since late 2019. Some people said 2019 was year zero on the food. But it would not surprise me if we were not at wheat, barley, and scales, and that is what we can see next. And I believe the scales will be rationing. They're going to ration the food, and that would be why they would roll out with a fake virus, is to put the entire earth under. I'm not saying it's fake. Like I had loved ones that died from it. I got it, and it was definitely worse than the flu. But the thing there is and I call it fake because it was manufactured. I'm not saying it's not real. The reason they would roll out with the virus there is that, as you guys already know, putting in the control systems for what's coming, putting in the control systems to ration food, and to give us a pass where we can't buy, sell, trade, bargain, or anything without being in the system properly. And the health would be the way to do it, because people can't escape health. And it goes into everything. Like everybody has a different stand on the mask and the shots and everything, because for example, I work with super elderly, so I didn't mind wearing masks and things at times, especially around them, even though I'd already gotten it and everything, and it wasn't that big a deal for me. But when you're around 85-year-old people and you're responsible for people's grandparents and great-grandparents, and then you're like, okay, I'll be super careful because it is a real virus, and not everyone's as healthy as I am. But there's other people who I can't blame. They said, I'm just not going to, I'm just going to walk through this snake patch, I guess, because it's pretty over there. They were like, we're not going to do a mask at all because we're just determined to keep our business open and show everybody, to be brave through it all. So I understand there's all different angles, but the purpose being control. Because we are at wheat, barley, and scales. It's about to be worldwide, inescapable. The elite can't control it. It's about to be worldwide, that serious and that important that no one can deny that we're going to need food alternatives. And no one can fake what's about to happen or out-fake it or whatever. And some people that are also agreeing, that don't even know me and all that I have discovered that are agreeing that we're at the third seal is the prophecy watcher Tom Horn. I love it. This is so fun. He came on some interview like the Hagman Report, and I'm so sad the Hagman Report's not on YouTube anymore. They didn't make it, but they tried to be on Rumble, but I think it's just not working. And it's sad they lost Joe Hagman and all that. But Steve Quayle and Tom Horn came on the Hagman Report, and Steve Quayle was trying desperately to shut Tom Horn down. It was hilarious. Steve Quayle is funny. So Tom Horn is on there saying, the elephant in the room is that we are about to see the third seal of Revelation open. I was like, yes! Of course, he's not the first one that said it, but he was like, this is the elephant in the room. This is where we're at. And he was pointing out the market changes, which I believe that's another control that they're going to put in right behind the virus, because they did the virus also economically, which means people are going to be desperate for whatever they offer us, right? As far as resets. And so Tom Horn was talking about the markets, and he was just doing it based on market, not even the food. And for some reason, Steve Quayle was trying to shut that down. I thought that was a hilarious conversation. And then the other person is Bob Kudla. When there was the apocalypse winter, I think of 2019, and on Adapt 2030 channel, Bob Kudla was on there. He was on, he keeps coming on 2030 channel and gives awesome, he's a Trading Genius Academy, and I've never tried them out, but he knows patterns, right? They keep talking about the weather on there, and of course they have the theory that it's a solar minimum, but it's not. It's the powers of heaven are shaking. It's not a grand solar minimum. It's not global climate change, global warmings. It's none of those things. It is the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And we're so close that they've already begun to shake. And it's coming from space. Nothing is man-made. It's happening to all the planets and all the moons. Everything is in volcanoes and turmoil and climate changes all over the solar system. Now tell me that that's man-made, right? And so Bob Kudla comes on there and is talking about, in a roundabout way, he's like, an angel says in the book of Revelation that they're going to be rationing out wheat and barleys, and the rich people are going to be able to buy the wheat and the poor people are going to have to buy the barley. He would say things like this repeatedly. Therefore, I took that as Bob Kudla is saying we're at the third seal also. I think there may have been someone else, but the only other person that I do remember clearly saying that was Gil Broussard. And he talks a lot about the planet 7X, and he does not have good theories on that, in my opinion, but he tries so hard, bless his heart. But he was saying something about the third seal also. Don't know why, forgot why. I just remembered he said it too. So Tom Horn's pretty smart. He wrote good books about, I think, himself and another one of those preacher guys pretty much predicted what was going to happen with the Pope resigning. So I thought it was awesome that he just came out and said it, and also awesome and hilarious that Steve Quayle tried to shut it down. So I wonder how much Steve Quayle knows. So those are some people that are also agreeing on that. As far as agreement on time frames, I made a note, and guys, I think I had way more notes on this than this before all the crap hit the fan for me. And I had to delete so many things because I was not sure what that guy was cursing on me. I hate that, but whatever. It's fine, because the important thing is Jesus, and that's already where I was at, you know. That's already the phase I was moving toward. This is more dangerous woods because they're a little bit thicker and deeper. And I used to walk in those woods constantly when I was a stupid teenager with a stick. That's all I had. Anyway, patterns that people notice. A lot of people have picked up on 2021 to 2028 to 2029 being important cycles. And like I said, I think I've missed a lot of the notes there of who all picked what up. But Erwin Baxter, who died, I believe, of COVID last year, said that he thought that, and he was a oneness Pentecostal, I don't agree with that doctrine, but he was saying that he thought that there was going to be a covenant of many made on, the covenant with many would likely be made in the fall of this year. I think a lot of people are looking at Rosh Hashanah, which people think the rapture is going to happen on that feast day. And I really need to study more about that, but I haven't had time to study anything because it's been pretty good agony and barely surviving and staying alive. Thank God things are getting better and better. But I don't plan on putting a whole lot of information on YouTube anymore anyway. I think I've said that repeatedly, but I did want to make just some fundamental videos, like explaining why I believe it's valid that what happened to me happened for that season, for that sign, and that pretty much the unpopular message of prepare for the revelation of Jesus, which means that we will suffer, we will be persecuted, we will think that we're losing everything, but it's perfectly okay. When you think you're losing everything, two things: it's perfectly okay, it's the revelation of Jesus, and that there's just so much short time. The time is so short it doesn't even matter anyway what we lose. That's really kind of carried me through my torture the past months of wondering how much I'm going to lose and how long I'm going to be sick. Is time is short anyway. This is in God's hands. But Erwin Baxter thought the covenant was going to happen this fall. A guy named Kenton Bayshore, I never heard of, Kenton Bayshore, believed in a rapture cycle in 2021 and basically the tribulation lasting till 2028. And I don't mind people that are pre-trib rapture. I really, especially before I got, hit so hard, I have been watching a lot of people who believed in pre-trib rapture just to look at their theories of why they were timing it the way they were. And I've come to kind of repent, guys, of looking at timing. It's not that I'm trying to control it or to control God or control my life or get to, whatever that would be evil, as much as it just fascinates me. I love it. And it's so neat and interesting, and it's just kind of like being the geek of the apocalypse or whatever. There's a lot of people doing that right now, but I definitely don't want to have the wrong motives in doing it, but I do think it's so interesting and gives God glory. Kent Hovind, he had I do not endorse his life at all right now, especially. He's like on his third wife of married to two women at one time, guys. But he's definitely the nerd, the young creation scientist. I'm so sad the way his life turned out as far as a witness. But Kent Hovind had a study of what on earth is about to happen. He had time to do it in prison. And years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, he said, his theory, he said, I hate to be a date setter. Let's not be a date setter. And I agree. That's just the dumbest thing. But he said, if I were to look at the timing on everything, I would put the dates of the tribulation beginning in 2021. This was years ago. And he was following things. See, as a young earth creationist, he had a lot of timetables collected of people like when they were born and died since the flood and before the flood. So they were looking at what cycles would that be called. He was looking at a cycle of Jubilee cycles. And he was matching that with Israel and saying that if he were to have to guess, forced to guess, tribulation would be beginning in 2021. That was his guess. And then you have the so-called scientific fact that the comet Apophis appears in 2029. You have the eclipse across America that supposedly spells out the doom of America, possibly coming. The next one will be coming in 2024, so that would be like a mid-trib point. And like I said, I had so much more information, guys. I believe I had about a dozen people who had mapped a very peculiar time frame between 2021 and 2029 or 8. But that could just be mapping out the third seal or something. It might not be, the tribulation. Who knows? I just think it's interesting. A lot of these things I just like to watch, kind of like Daniel. I assume that like those guys that followed the star to Jesus' birth, they were kind of probably that way, watching the signs and the numbers, not to be weird, but just to glorify God. And that's how they were able to come to Bethlehem. It worships God. And you're spending your time on worshiping God and pointing people to Christ instead of doing wickedness and lewdness or whatever, getting caught up in things that are not healthy. But I think those people came from a school that Daniel started, possibly. Daniel and his people. But you also have like the verse in Genesis that talks about God gives us the lights in the heaven as signs of what time it is, and signs and signals for prophecy. So God gives us that, and we need to always be careful that we have the Lord in our heart and we can hear His Spirit guiding us and everything, way more than paying attention to numbers and everything. That's like why I was shutting my channel down of my own accord before things even hit me, is because I said I just want to get closer to God. And anyway, so you have Mark Biltz, however you say his name. He has his own website. He's watching blood moons. Evangelist Anita Fuentes is also studying the blood moons, but I have not even looked at it that close. So my camera died. I'm going to wrap this video up. Mark Biltz has been talking about the Shemitah cycles. He's noticing a very interesting cycle coming up, 2022 to 2029. All he's saying, a lot of people, I have heard them say before too, that if something does not happen on this 7-year cycle, then something is going to happen on the next 7-year cycle, because these are Shemitah cycles and Jubilee cycles. So just an interesting pattern there. I think I've covered everything that you guys would be interested in even knowing about. As far as this goes, I did not even get into the 4th seal and beyond. That's a little bit too far in the future. I just kind of wanted to explain why I believe we're in the 3rd seal, what's been happening with me, and how it happened. And the seals were hidden in the mainstream media to keep people blinded. I believe the first 4 seals, 1 through 4, those horsemen will prepare the world to accept Antichrist rule due to emergencies and disasters. And the only major things that I believe I was shown along the way that tells me something is going on, I was given a warning dream in 2009 about everything that's happened since then, and there's still parts of the dream that haven't happened yet. But so far the dream has come true. And also in 2011 I had it's like everywhere I went I could feel something shifting in the heavenlies. I could feel shifts happening and changes in the heavenlies, and I was texting people, could they feel it? And something similar happened whenever they passed the law that approved of the marriage, that I can't say those words on the internet, but I think you guys know what I mean. When they passed the bill that marriage of the same kind of people was so-called a thing and legit, that I was just walking in the Spirit for like 3 days. And I was walking around Walmart, and I just wasn't even in Walmart, and I'm not sure what that was. I thought, well, I probably should be fasting right now, but I wasn't, and I didn't know how long it would last, and then it was back to normal. But I don't know. I'm not sure, other than this crazy attack on 9/11 last year, that for now I'm taking it as a signal, that I'm being used as a signal, because like I said, our family may be using the revelatory very strongly, and that for signs and signals, I believe we've been used for signs and signals before, but it's not the kind where we appease people's flesh and we tell them, oh, you're so wonderful and I can't wait, God's using you and you're great and you're the best thing ever, and your ego is all puffed up. And it's not like that, and it's not those kinds of words that we get, as much as we get warnings. Like when the Holy Ghost first came over me, I could feel hell in the earth until I prayed for God to take it away. So we get the warnings, and we, without even meaning to, we shake people up, and God uses us, unfortunately, because we're not very popular, and in churches and stuff we have to stay super quiet, and we also have the attitude of we just don't really care what people think about us. So that could be also why we're used, but of just shaking up, if this is your blind spot, this is where we need to repent. We're very straightforward. We don't play politics. We don't have respecter of persons. We don't respect anybody's person, that they're higher and greater and we must worship them, and that's offensive to us. And so I can see that's why we would be used. So we're the kind, if we are kind of a type of any kind of prophetic, we're not used in the glorification of the flesh as much as we're used for the kind that basically would just get hit by all the forces of hell to show a signal, right? Of what time we're in. It's not fun, it's not pleasant, it doesn't appeal to the flesh at all. And we might not even make it. Feel kind of like Jonah sometimes, the Jonah type or something. But anyway, that is what this video is about. I hope the last half isn't too low quality. It's a different camera, this last little part. And so that's basically what I wanted to share as far as the breakdown of the seals and why I believe the way I do and what I think has happened to me. And I plan to continue on in my channel now with my testimony, just to like confirm things. And that will probably take a minute because there's a little bit to that, especially who that preacher was. I may snitch on him, but now everything's gone to the spirit, because in the flesh it's going to be he said, she said, and he's going to have all the influence and people are going to believe him. So I am in like a petition that his witchcraft is removed from the church, from the body of Christ. And I will probably be fasting until that happens. This has gone to the spirit, and because that's the only place it can be in, and this is absolutely not allowable in the church. And I'm not even angry or upset. It's just the way it is, and it's kind of like a responsibility I have now. So as much as I would love to petition the credentialing agencies and snitch at the pastors at the church where he preaches, I'm just praying that they are aware of what they need to be aware of, because they are in danger. And he almost killed her. He almost killed that pastor. For 3 years, she was deathly ill, lost her career, and I know why now. And he may not fully even know what's happening. It's those demons that probably his whole family has. It's craziness. But anyway, he's in trouble. I'm praying for him to get saved and for that to be removed from the body of Christ. And it's much better, so I'm hopeful. So that's where we are on all of that. I'm not done spilling all the tea, so look forward to any future videos on all of that. I don't really even need to spend a lot of time on it, just wanted to explain and to warn people what can happen with preachers and how they can just go off the deep end. Maybe they were there already, but danger. Once more, I find myself always warning of danger and warning of hidden danger and lies. So that's that. And so just stay tuned. I plan to still upload for a little while. Not going to keep this channel as active as the other one at all. But I do find it a blessing. I think it's going to be a blessing to share what little bit I do. And hope you guys find it interesting. Hope you're having a blessed day.